A week one filled with fireworks is in the books. The Big 12 going 8-0 on Saturday, winning by an average of almost 40 points. We set our sights to week two. Iowa State, big noon kickoff. Devin Dampier, can you hear us? Inside the 12 is next. Welcome back to the Big 12 Dojo. I'm Pete Sousa. This is the quarterback, Taylor McHargue. He'll be escorting us back into the quarterback club here shortly. Big 12, big weekend coming up. Week two is going to see the Big 12 play 6 games against Power 4 conferences. We'll get into those, but partner, who'd you like in week one?
Got to start with Utah, right? They had that window, the late night special against UCLA, Devin Dampier. Utah trying to bounce back off a 5-7 disappointing season a year ago, and how dominating of an effort was that against UCLA. And then obviously on Monday night, against TCU at North Carolina, the spectacle of Bill Belichick's first head coaching appearance for North Carolina, and TCU dominates. I think it's got to start with Utah and TCU this week for the Big 12.
Hey, I was riding the hype train with everybody else into this one, but Josh Hoover, Sonny Dykes, they had different plans. Let's take a look exactly how it went down in Chapel Hill. It was a huge game. The anticipation obviously very high. There he is, Bill Belichick. He had the sleeves cut off, but you couldn't cut off this type of offensive performance. That's the best throw I've seen all year.
It was a dime over the shoulder of Jordan Dwyer, exactly where it needed to be. And then our guy, Bud Clark, talked about him in our opening episode. He shines early for that TCU defense. After TCU defense gave up the score on the first possession of the game, the rest of this was all TCU. And this Kavorian Barnes, the UTSA transfer, over 100 yards on the ground for TCU. It got so out of hand that they've got Herb Street's dog on air. And sorry for Coach Bill Belichick, but TCU came in, upset the apple cart, and a dominating performance again for the Horned Frogs. And what was a massive window, there were so many eyeballs and so much attention that was on this game, and TCU really a fantastic effort.
Really cool. You know, Sonny Dykes talked openly about it, using that first game against Coach Prime in Colorado just 2 years ago to kind of get his team to steady the ship, and they were all about business. We go to L.A. now, no place like Hollywood for Devin Dampier to open up his showing. He was unbelievable. 43-10. Utah just owns UCLA.
I think it's got to start with Utah's offensive line. And I think this is the best unit, not only in the Big 12, this may be the best offensive line unit in the country. And they showed it against UCLA, dominated in the trenches. Devin Dampier played fantastic. I thought he was really efficient, made really good decisions with the football. And I thought he picked up right where he left off a year ago at New Mexico, where he ran for over 1,100 yards, ran for almost 100 yards in this game. But it was both sides of the ball. The defensive line got after Nico Iamaleava. And for Utah, I think they catapulted themselves. You saw they're in the coaches poll. Imagine they'll be in the AP poll as well. And they're now a mainstay in this league, and I think a team that a little under the radar coming into the season. That performance against UCLA has got them right back at the top of the expectations in this league.
Well, up front, Utah is a force to be reckoned with. You think they have one of the best offensive lines maybe in college football?
Well, I think there's 2 guys that you may see get drafted in the first round next year. Spencer Fano, we already talked about. And when you have a piece like, there are 2 pieces like that you can lean on your offensive line, especially when you bring in a new quarterback in Devin Dampier, that makes everything easier for him, and that will bode well for them as the season goes along, because if your quarterback's not getting hit and they're able to play comfortable, you're going to win a lot of football games.
By the way, Connor Fano making opposing quarterbacks very uncomfortable. He was living life in the backfield. His brother, just as good as Spencer, just about playing defense for Utah. There was some defense also. We got to look at Baron Morton. He went down, a real scary time for Texas Tech fans. We see here as we go to the video, a huge win for Texas Tech, but here is Baron Morton, gets rolled up there. X-rays have come back negative. I want to read it right here because Joey McGuire said, hey, if he feels good and he's ready to go, we plan on playing him. And this is a quote now. He says he's really on point right now. He and Mac Leftwich, our offensive coordinator, have aligned as a coordinator and a quarterback, so we don't want to switch and disrupt that. It's a tough situation, right? Because they have a game this weekend against Kent State. You think that's obviously winnable. And do you keep the rhythm going, or do you keep Baron Morton out of the game?
If it's me and I'm head coach Joey McGuire, I'm keeping him out of this game, right? I mean, the Kent State, this is going to be a team that Texas Tech's going to be favored by 6 touchdowns in this game. get through this week, keep him healthy. You got Oregon State coming to town the following week. And I know the x-ray came back negative and the MRI came back negative, and that's fantastic. But if I'm a Texas Tech fan, give him one more week in a game that you're going to be a heavy favorite. Make sure he's completely ready to go as they get towards the end of non-conference play against Oregon State next week.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Time will tell right now, day to day for Baron Morton. We look now at our hell of a good game-breaking plays. Look, there were big plays all over the Big 12. How about Miles Montgomery, right? Been playing in the shadows. Now he's getting his opportunity, running right down the sideline. A 64-yard catch and run. Hurdles a defender. Woo, pretty cool. Miles Montgomery, a 64-yard play right there. And then BYU did it with the special teams. How about Jack Kelly with the scoop and score?
Well, this was a huge play for BYU. Anytime you get a special teams effort, massive for your entire team. Actually went off a helmet of a BYU. Remember that special teams unit right there in the face mask and able to take advantage.
Rocco Becht, can't forget about him. 66 yards. Shout out to Brett Eskildson, his second appearance on Inside the 12. That one took him down to the 9-yard line. A touchdown pass 3 plays later. Rocco Becht continues to produce, whether it's in the short window or whether it's behind the defense.
Yeah, Rocco Becht, another impressive performance. And you look around the Big 12, a number of teams that had those matchups against FCS opponents. Some of them didn't go as well as hoped. We'll talk about Kansas State in a little bit. But Iowa State, no hangover from flying back from Dublin. Rocco Becht sharp again.
All right, we're coming back with some of the best quarterbacks in the country. That's right, we're still talking about the Big 12, and we'll be with the quarterback. We can cut the line going to the quarterback club with Taylor McHargue. So stay with us. We're talking signal callers when we come back. Inside the 12 is brought to you by Hell of a Good Dip. Game on, dip in with Hell of a Good. We are back here on Inside the 12. A lot of really good quarterback play here in week 1. The Big 12 actually leading all FBS conference in passing yards, and there's a real good reason why. A lot of quarterbacks to like so far in this class.
I thought the quarterback play top down for the league was really solid in week 1. And even going back to week 0, I think you could go across the league. And we talked about how deep we felt like this quarterback class would be, and they lived up to the hype in week 1. But I think you have to start with Josh Hoover this week. Out of all the impressive performances, the pressure that was on TCU going on the road in that environment, playing North Carolina, I thought Josh Hoover was fantastic. He had one throw that got away from him on a screen, little high, ends up being an interception. If you take that away, I thought he was near perfect and delivered throws downfield and in some contested windows, and then also in and out of operating their offense where you could tell he's doing so much at the line of scrimmage. They're putting a lot on him, and that Kendall Briles offense was humming early and often. And the last piece that we talked about last week, TCU ran the ball so well against North Carolina. I thought offensive line play was fantastic for TCU, and that was something a year ago, TCU's rush offense being towards the bottom of the league that we said needed to improve. Well, it did. It benefited Josh Hoover tremendously, and I thought, again, out of all of the performances out of this league at the quarterback position, you have to start with Josh Hoover as the most impressive in week 1.
Now, prior to the game, the broadcast, Nick Saban actually broke down some of Josh Hoover's best throws. That was okay. Now he's about to be anointed right now. Our own Taylor McHargue, we're going to break down the Josh Hoover film. And why not a huge game? 27 of 36, 284 yards. And you mentioned it. As we look at the tape, picture-perfect throws all around.
Well, we showed this one a little bit ago, but this was the touchdown over the shoulder to Jordan Dwyer. And this is a perfect throw. On the outside shoulder, exactly where it needs to be. Only your guy can catch it. It's either an incompletion or it's a touchdown. And it was spot on. Perfect throw. I'll show you again. He keeps his eyes down the middle of the field, then works left, throws this away from the free safety and over the corner, drops it in the bucket, and this was a perfect throw. Again, Jordan Dwyer winning on the outside. I thought he played fantastic for the Horned Frogs as well. But you go out there and throw that ball 50 times, you're not going to have a better throw than that one right there from Josh Hoover.
Now, I sent you a text right away, right after that throw. You and Philip, our producer, I said, best throw I have seen all season long. I mean, who am I? But I got you agreeing with me, so I'm in good shape. All right, let's move on now. We're going to talk accuracy now?
Yeah, well, the second clip that we have here was showing Josh Hoover being dynamic outside of the pocket. And I thought this was an element that shows his athleticism going to be working to his left, and this is another ball to Jordan Dwyer. There is one spot for this ball to be thrown and be completed, and it's right there. That is as good as it gets, working to your left. I can't stress enough for a right-handed quarterback going left how difficult this throw is with a defender that's in a pretty good position. And I laughed when this was completed in the game because Jordan Dwyer really had no choice but to catch this ball. That or it hits him in the face. A great play reacting and getting his hands up to make this play. But I go back to, again, the athleticism from Josh Hoover, rolling left for a right-handed quarterback and putting it in that spot. It was just a great example of how good he is. And when you think about arm talent, this is a great clip of what arm talent looks like in real game action.
So Jordan Dwyer, you know, we saw Hoover hook up with him a bunch of times, but that one right there, it was like cosmic, the connection between the two of them. What is that like for a receiver and a quarterback to gel like that?
Yeah, I felt like for Jordan Dwyer, but also for the offense as a whole, you could tell that they were on the same page, very much in sync, and Jordan Dwyer did a nice job separating. That first touchdown over the shoulder, that was a fade route, and we talk all the time about receivers having to stack their defender, getting over top of them, and then giving the opportunity for the quarterback to throw them open. I thought Jordan Dwyer did a fantastic job all game. That second clip, reacting to the ball on the sideline, that is a difficult catch to make, especially may have been a little defensive pass interference that they got away with, but that Jordan Dwyer and Josh Hoover connection, I think TCU fans should expect to see that moving forward.
Josh Hoover, 3,800 passing yards last year, more than 25 touchdowns. Only one other quarterback returns with those kind of lofty numbers this season. That is Mr. Nussmeier in Baton Rouge. That is pretty good company. All right, we're going to step aside. We're going to come back with our power rankings, the Big 12, top to bottom. We'll tell you who's the best. Back on Inside the 12, Pete Sousa alongside Taylor McHargue, and new feature this week. Time to unveil, and I'm gonna. These are his power rankings, by the way, folks. No, I mean let's get to these power rankings, but I'm over here. No, I'm actually pretty supportive of these. These look very good. But let's take a look at who you've got. We're going to go top 5 for now, and we'll talk about others receiving votes in our world.
Yeah, if you take any offense to these power rankings, send all your hate mail to me on social media, not Pete. I think we'll start with Texas Tech. I think a team that there's been so much made about what they did in the transfer portal a year ago. Baron Morton, great that MRI came back clean. We've already talked about earlier in the season how important it is that he stays healthy. Blowout win against Arkansas Pine Bluff, and they did what they were supposed to do. Anytime you have these matchups against FCS teams, that's exactly how it's supposed to look, right? You'd rather look like that than some other teams that in the league that played FCS opponents and didn't look great. For Texas Tech, it's still a wait and see, and I think it will be that way probably through most of the month of September. They've got Kent State coming up, then they've got Oregon State. I'm not sure we're going to learn much about the Red Raiders until they go on the road at Utah, and I think that may end up being one of the best games of the season in the Big 12. But for right now, I've got Texas Tech in that 5 spot.
As we move on in our power rankings, Arizona State, you cannot overlook the Sun Devils. Sam Leavitt looked great this week.
I thought it was interesting that Kenny Dillingham talked about may have gotten out-coached in the opener. And I think that's probably a motivation tactic for his team. Sam Leavitt looked fantastic, loved his dynamic run. I think you saw an element using his legs that a lot of people forget about. And Arizona State, very similar. I thought in week 1 it was you did what you were supposed to do against a Northern Arizona team that's pretty scrappy, a good FCS team. Now we'll learn a lot about them going on the road at Mississippi State. Preseason ranked towards the bottom of the league in the SEC. Arizona State a favorite in the Big 12. This is still a challenging environment, and get ready to hear a lot of cowbells, but I've got Arizona State in the 4 spot.
Kenny Dillingham talking about their travel said we got to stay about an hour away from Starkville because I don't want to stay at any casinos. You know, I got to keep my guys out of trouble. TCU, no trouble for them against North Carolina. What do you like about them overall, though, to have them at 3rd in the power rankings? Some people might say having them ahead of Arizona State. You might be moving a little too fast there, Taylor.
Yeah, I think it's what we saw out of week 1. And I think results matter and how you win matters. And for TCU, I thought the offensive and defensive line play is what was most exciting for me if I'm a TCU fan, and especially the offensive line play. You saw a number of times in that game both guards or guard and tackle pulling against North Carolina, and they had a hat on a hat, assignment sound, and that is the piece for TCU. We know about Josh Hoover. We know about their weapons on the outside, but I thought Bud Clark and that defense played fantastic. The front played fantastic, and the offensive line play for TCU looks so much more improved than a year ago, and that's why I've got them in the 3 spot, and the fact that they won in a convincing fashion on a massive stage.
All world. I heard Wes Durham say this morning that they're There are reports that Sonny Dykes may have called off the Dogs in that game in Chapel Hill against North Carolina. So that's really good sign for the Frogs and for TCU. Another team that seems to be ahead of schedule so far this year is Iowa State. Kansas State comes back right after that 5,000-mile trip from Dublin, and they almost lose on Saturday night against an FCS opponent. It was the exact opposite for Iowa State, also coming back from that trip in Ireland, just taking care of business.
Well, it's the same thing we talked about with Texas Tech. You play an FCS opponent, you are supposed to look like the dominant Big 12 team, and that's what Iowa State did. And you nailed it right on the head, Pete. If you play coming back from the 5,000-mile trip to Dublin, is there any sort of hangover? And there wasn't for Iowa State, and I think if you're an Iowa State fan, you're excited about that, and Rocco Becht continues to shine. The veteran signal caller, a guy that I think, and you've seen his name pop up a little bit on social media in the last week or so, I think that's a guy that's playing his way into a little more hype around him. When we talk about the NFL next season, this being his last year at Iowa State, but I think they are firmly in that 1, 2, 3 spot. You could kind of interchange them anywhere in there, but this is a really solid Iowa State team, and I thought it was a great performance against Sept.
Hey, speaking of the hype train, no better opportunity. You got Fox Big Noon Kickoff coming to town ahead of your game against Iowa. That'll be in Ames, and that will be awesome for the entire program and school. All right, you got somebody in number 1?
I like Utah right now as the top team in the Big 12, and I thought the way that they competed against UCLA, that was the late night spot. I was on the West Coast, watched every snap of that game, and I think the biggest thing that stood out to me was the violence that team played with on both sides. And when you talk about defensive line, rallying to the football, playing downhill, those are the things that these teams for Utah that we think of in the past that were the best teams in Utah history, that's how they played, and that's what they put on display. Devin Dampier was fantastic, and I thought the offensive line we've already talked about, they may have the best unit in the country. They're going to continue to be able to run the football well, but if that defense plays like they did against Nico Iamaleava, had him running for his life the entire game, it wasn't but a handful of drop back passes for him where he had a clean pocket and had 3 seconds to throw. He was scrambling all over the place. I think if Utah is able to put that performance consistently on the field on the defensive side of the ball, I'm not sure that there's anybody in this league that's going to be able to beat them, especially if you have to travel to Utah.
All right, let's talk about who missed out on being ranked in your top 5. Kansas State is a conversation you got to have. I said to you yesterday, that was a great example, their win Saturday night in Manhattan, of a win is a win is a win.
Oh, it was sloppy, and especially on the defensive side. And Avery Johnson, I mean, that was a season-saving win for Kansas State. If you drop your week 1 opener against against Iowa State and then come back and lose to an FCS team, you're talking about maybe not being able to salvage your season, but that was a huge win for Kansas State to pull that out. But sloppy there, and then I would have Baylor kind of hanging around there as well, even though in a loss, some good stuff on the offensive side. They've got a lot to clean up in their run defense.
All right, we're going to come back and tell you all about some of those huge matchups coming up this weekend. We mentioned Iowa State. We pull the curtain up on the rest of them when we come back. Inside the 12 rolls on with our week 2 of football, upcoming games, and there are some great matchups here, Taylor.
Oh, we've got a handful here again in week 2, marquee matchups, and these will have huge implications later in the season. Houston and Rice playing for the Bayou Bucket. Got to give a shout out to that one. But a number of matchups. Army trying to bounce back after losing to Tarleton State. They go on the road to Kansas State.
We got to start with Iowa State. Big noon kickoff in Ames. All eyes on that matchup.
It was a game a year ago that Iowa State won on a last-second field goal at Iowa, and this time around, they get to host Iowa at home. This is a massive game. I mean, in-state, everybody will obviously be focused on Iowa State. I think the biggest thing that I'm looking for, does Iowa have any improvement throwing the football? There was so much made of Mark Gronowski coming over from South Dakota State. They really struggled throwing the football. If Iowa State can take advantage and force Iowa to be one-dimensional, I think there's a great opportunity for Iowa, who is a favorite right now going into this game, for Iowa State to come away with a huge win and move to 3-0.
Yeah, Iowa State, a little more than a field goal favorite in that one. So really going to be a close affair. This next affair, man, this is so cool to see this Southwest Conference rivalry renewed. We're talking about Baylor and SMU.
Kevin Jennings and SMU, this was a playoff team a year ago. And Baylor, a huge opportunity going on the road. We talked about this, how difficult the schedule is right out of the gate for Baylor. They play Auburn at home, and now they're on the road at SMU trying to bounce back. What I'm looking for is, can Baylor shore up their rush defense? A week ago, Jackson Arnold and Auburn ran roughshod over that Baylor front. Is there an answer? Kevin Jennings is a dynamic player at quarterback, and if they can't find an answer, Baylor, in their rush defense, Kevin Jennings is going to exploit that as well. Baylor going in as a slight underdog in that game. This is a huge opportunity for the Bears.
Jackie Marshall, probably Baylor's best defensive player, was lost at the end of the first quarter in that game against Auburn. He is expected to be back for this game against SMU. That is huge. We move on now. Another huge rivalry game, Kansas and Mizzou. Who do you like there, and how do you break it down?
Now, the border war, this is a huge one as well for Kansas, especially. Missouri, I thought, looked good in week one. Pribula winning that spot at the quarterback position. They had a bit of a quarterback competition going on, and there's an injury now. It's Pribula's job now. Kansas, can they go in and play spoiler? And they've looked good through week two. Jalen Daniels looks like he's returned to form from 2022. It's got to be clean football. That's going to be something that Kansas, the issues that they've had the past couple seasons really were derived around turnovers. If they can play clean on the road at Missouri, I think they've got a chance to go in and play spoiler.
We talked about Arizona State traveling to Starkville, Mississippi to take on Mississippi State. Is this a trap game potentially?
Absolutely. This is a spot everyone expects the Big 12 champion from a year ago to go in and win convincingly against Mississippi State. This is a tough place to go play. There's going to be cowbells everywhere. Again, we talked about this earlier. Just a touchdown favorite, which is not a lot when you think about going on the road and playing an SEC team. Arizona State has the edge at almost every position, especially at quarterback with Sam Leavitt. It's a game they should win, but don't be surprised if Arizona State goes in and plays sloppy, and some of what we saw last week against Northern Arizona, and it's a slow start. Don't be surprised. This is absolutely a trap game. I think Arizona State wins, but this is a tough spot.
Real tough spot. Well, we talk about those big TV windows, 10:15 Eastern time. BYU taking on Stanford. BYU a big favorite in that game. Bear Bachmeier, not in the quarterback club yet. At least you haven't talked about him. Dude had 5 touchdowns on Saturday against Portland State. Let's go. He's knocking on the door.
Well, I think you're going to see from BYU a very similar strategy to what they had against Portland State. Against Stanford, they're going to run the football. Ran for almost 500 yards against Portland State. Bachmeier played well. 7 of 11 passing for just under 100 yards. I don't think they're going to ask him to do a lot throwing the football, at least anytime soon. I think they're going to try and work him in. Again, this was a guy, they thought Jake Retzlaff was going to be the quarterback until it got to the summer. So for BYU, they're going to bring along their freshman quarterback, continue to try to run the football well. And I think against Stanford, they're going to have success. BYU much better up front than the Stanford defensive line.
I feel like I'm waiting in line outside the quarterback club, and these guys just keep passing me by. Like, you just let Bear in. I'm still sitting there waiting to get in. Inside the 12. Obviously, that will do it for us. So we've had enough of me, but you can't get enough of him, the quarterback Taylor McHargue. We are back next week. Week 3 is going to be amazing, but our sights are set on week 2. Enjoy all the games. We will see you back here next week.